Hi, my name is Darin, and I bought a house with a very interesting criminal past.
Why? What? Why would you do that? You are a professional real estate agent. Why? Okay, so let's start off maybe with when did you? How old were you when you bought this house? Was this your first house?
This is my first house, and I was probably too young and maybe not as smart as I might be today. Let's get that off the table.
Okay.
But yeah, I had a very interesting past to it. The house actually, prior to me owning it, this is the running joke, is how long did it continue after I bought it? But prior to me owning it, was a what is called a previous grow operation. I'm sure your viewers probably know what was being grown there.
If you are in BC, you know what a grow up is.
Yes.
And you know what's being grown there.
It's the color of my sweater. People like to enjoy it in various ways, gummies, smoking, all that sort of stuff.
And you used to not be able to buy it at a dispensary.
That's right, exactly, yeah.
You bought a house that was a grow. Why? How? Where did it start?
Yeah, well, so you and I have been in real estate about the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And it started back, I bought it in 2010. And so buying a home that used to be considered a grow up used to be actually not that hard, as you remember. There was still a stigma actually, rather, and the stigma is being like, well, what if, there's bad people living there, bad people visiting. What if they came back? The banks didn't love them, but they didn't hate them like they do today either. So I actually kind of saw it as an opportunity. There was two opportunities. One, I get a house at a discount, right? You know me, I like my discounts, right? Why not? It's like Black Friday every day for me. So got the house at a little bit of a discount, maybe 10%. Got to buy something that I wouldn't maybe been able to normally afford.
Sorry to interrupt, do you think you got a 10% discount on that house because of its previous situation?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. If you took that same house today, and I actually sold that house last year in 2020, same thing, sold it for a little bit of a discount as well. And I would roughly say it was anywhere between 10 to 15%.
Really? You think it's that much?
Yep.
I've heard when I've spoken to a mortgage broker that deals with a lot of them in the past, and he says he was actually brought to court as, I guess he was an expert financing them. And he was brought to court. I don't know what the trial was about. And when his research went back, he said the average grow up still sold for only 1.5 to 5% less than other market value. The thing that he identified is that they just take a lot longer usually to sell.
Would you call an expert that does that an expert in financing drug operations a drug dealer, or what would you?
No, well, that's actually an interesting.
I'm just kidding, by the way.
No, that's actually a very interesting point, because you said grow ups used to be pretty easy to finance. It was like
Yes.
20, 30% down, maybe 35% down. You could go ahead and buy a grow up. Some banks were even easier than that.
Yeah.
But the rumors are that I hear is houses were being sold, and then they were being busted and sold and busted again,
Yes.
and sold and busted again. And then one day, one of the judges went in and called in whoever, I don't want to say what bank it was. I know what bank it was. And they basically called them in front of the judge and said, hey, are you guys funding criminal activity?
Mhm.
And that's when the banks all went, nope,
Yeah,
we're
done.
out. So you bought pre that time.
Yeah, and I've heard the similar story. You might have told that story to me. Maybe I told it to you. Who knows?
We probably just made it up.
We made it up, both of us. Yeah. But that was my understanding as well, and that was part of the reason why they were difficult to finance and whatnot. So, the other reason I had bought it, though, you sell it, or you buy it at a discount rather. So everybody likes getting a deal on stuff. And you get a house that you fundamentally maybe wouldn't have been able to buy. But it was also an older house. So the way I looked at it, I think lots of people would agree that marijuana at the time being illegal was stupid. And you kind of saw the writing on the wall that it was probably going to come. So I took a little bit of a gamble, thinking that at one point it was going to get legalized. And it was an old house. So, my fallback plan was, well, let's say it's always a problem. I'll keep the house. And maybe one day I'll knock it down. After you knock it down, there's no problem anymore, because that, that problem, that stigma that's tied to the actual house itself, not literally the property, goes away, right? You build a new house, you got the land for a discount. I'm happy, I'm laughing.
So you lived in the house.
I did, yeah.
What kind of, when you bought, what type of regulations were there that you had to make okay, or that you had to satisfy for the bank approval to get financing?
Yeah, so all banks actually kind of see them a little bit differently, but at the time we had to have something called an environmental study. So you want to make sure obviously the house is safe to live in, and one of the biggest fears, you hear people say, well, there's mold in the walls and spores in the air and stuff, and
Yeah.
you don't want to live in a house that's not healthy, right? So we had to have something called an environmental assessment done. So somebody comes in and they test the quality of the air. They'll swab random spots within the house and they'll take them back to the lab and they'll say, is there an issue here? Is there a health issue? And what I find, I've sold, I wouldn't say a lot of grow ups, and I'm sure you've done a handful as well in your time. But I find when these ones come back, there's a lot of assumptions that are made that these are unhealthy homes. But when those lab results come back from getting an environmental assessment, many times the results come back and they go, what, since your house has been renovated and updated, you're probably better health wise inside of your home than the neighbor who's never renovated.
Yeah.
regardless of what the history of the house is.
Yeah. So you may have had mold in your house from a leaky roof that's way worse than a remediated grow up, right? Like
Yeah.
you could end up in a spot where, I do find that, because I've never seen in selling the few that I have over the years, I've never seen a report come back saying it's not healthy to live there.
Me neither. And I mean, I'm not a botanist or have a degree in growing plants or the effects on
You
plants.
didn't continue the operation.
No, we discontinued it. Actually, my home inspector, when I bought it, found a leaf about that big in the crawl space, which was so we know where it was being done. But I'm the same. I've never seen a report come back like that. But my understanding is too, like, there's nothing unique about a marijuana plant. We always use the example of tomato plants. Well, if you had somebody growing tomatoes in their house and they've got hydroponic lights and moisture in the house and whatnot, you're creating similar issues to that of, it doesn't matter what the plant is.
It's funny that you say that, because I have had a building inspector find tomato plants being started in a crawl space.
They probably had a grow up previously and then they replaced them with tomato plants.
They could have, maybe. Well, I'm sure
that's what we did.
Given what's gone on with inflation currently, that's probably your better marketing strategy, is to grow tomatoes. But
yes.
I have seen that. When you bought the house, what was your main driving factor to say that house with that problem over top of just another house? Was it just price?
That was a part of it. I was younger at the time and I thought I wanted a big house to have parties in, right? It was 26, I think. And probably by 27, I was done partying. But, I wanted a bigger house and just thinking future, I could hold this house for a long time. I definitely wanted some land, and I wouldn't have been able to get the same characteristics in that house in another home just because of the difference of price.
Okay.
So at the time, this is going to sound like ages ago now based on what the prices are doing, but at the time I paid $400,000 for that house roughly.
Yeah.
And that similar house without that kind of stigma was probably $450,000.
Okay.
So, it gave me an opportunity to have something that I would have normally been able to afford. Yeah.
So you lived in that house for how long?
10 years. Was there for 10 years.
What's it like to sell a house with that past now, as opposed to, because you only sold it last year?
Yeah, there's I'd say there's more hoops to jump through now. And one of the things about our industry is I find like the client is only as good as the person who's able to explain what the challenges might be to them, right? So in this case, they're realtor. So one of the things, being a realtor myself, is obviously we have to make sure that we're making that disclosure to any potential buyers. That's really important for them, so they know exactly what they're buying. But there was a part where I almost had to help people kind of wrap their heads around it, and I've always kind of had this philosophy about previous grow ops is like, what really is the problem? So we know there's no health issue because we've had it tested, right? We know, the electrical's safe. We know the plumbing's okay. We know there's no moisture in the home and whatnot. So we knew all these things, and still we've got this stigma attached to it. But why? What is it? So it didn't really make sense to me.
Was it harder to sell, do you think, than all the houses you're selling for your clients? Was it harder to sell your house with that stigma, or was it okay because the market was so good?
The market was decent. It was in August of 2020, so the market was just about to start to take off. We were coming out of that slump of COVID. It was starting to heat up, and while I would say it was more difficult to sell than a normal home that I might list for sale, I wouldn't say it was hard. The market was really productive at that time. It was in North Delta, and there was houses were selling relatively quickly, like week, 2 weeks if they're priced appropriately. We took a month. right? Wasn't a big deal. Like, was able to get it, give it to a family who had the same opportunities we did when we bought it, right? They got it at a better price, and it was in a location that they loved. It just had this, what we're calling a stigma on it, but they got a house for their family that way.
Do you think, or well, you've got involvement with boards and higher levels of real estate. Do you think we're going to get to a spot ever where that can be wiped off, like a proper certification to say, okay, we no longer have to have this as a stigmatized property, or do you think they're always going to be that way?
I think it will change eventually. And there has been a lot of lobbying by the real estate industry on that exact thing. And I know that because I've actually been a part of it. So I've been at the BC legislature talking to MLAs about exactly that. And unfortunately, this has been over a course of years as well. And we haven't seen a lot of traction in that. And where the issue really lies is, like, you've got housing stock. We'll take my old home as an example. You've got housing stock there's nothing wrong with it. Right. It's just got this stigma. It's almost like saying somebody used to be maybe heavy and I don't want to date them because of their past or something like that. Right. And so it's got this stigma attached to it, but there's no standard remediation process. And we really need the government to kind of step in with that. So the University of the Fraser Valley, as an example, you may know this. University of the Fraser Valley was commissioned, and I think actually the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board asked them to do this, where they came up with a process for what a remediated home should actually look like. Like, how can we make sure the end user, the buyer, is safe in their purchase of this property, so we know that there's no health issues, and we can say this house has a rubber stamp, it's good, there's nothing wrong. We brought that to MLAs in Victoria, and while it seems like a good idea, it's got no traction. And we've got, I can't remember the numbers, but it's well over 20,000 properties in BC have this stigma, and it's difficult for people to buy these. So the banks don't like them. There's this stigma that's been created as well, just in the minds of people. And until we get kind of that clarity about what a safe home looks like, it's going to probably continue to be a problem. But we're on the heels, or not on the heels, but we've been legalized, right, over the last, I guess, 3 years, 2 or 3 years now. So it might get there. But it's going to take government leadership to get there, because the banks aren't going to do it. They've got no interest in doing it.
Yeah, and I don't think the government has, like anything in regulation in real estate, people don't do the transaction often enough for the government to really step in, or because the actual citizens are not lobbying themselves.
That's right.
Right? It's us as the agents that are like, hey, there's a better way, and then we're the big bad agents, and we're only doing it for self-interest. So I have a hope that we can do that without literally tearing down all of the homes, right? But there should be like a, nope, recertified, don't have to discuss it again, or just give that certificate and get financing as usual. Because like you say, they're probably better houses than the ones of the same age that were not renovated.
Yeah, well, we have to remove the problem. And if, if you have a leaky roof in the house we're in right now and you fix that roof, the question comes, well, do you need to disclose that? Yeah. Right. And, the real estate counselors, the British Columbia Financial Services, BCFSA, whatever it stands for. Yeah. They just changed it. So we're still getting used to the acronym there. But regardless, it's less clear on that should be disclosed. And actually sometimes it's been challenged. My understanding is where that wouldn't need to be disclosed because the roof's been fixed. It's not a problem anymore.
So, right? So there's an argument maybe even at court where once I fixed it, it's fixed.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. But we haven't caught up as an industry yet, for sure.
That's right.
And I don't think everybody really wants to be the one to go to court to get a judge to make that.
I don't, whether I'm right or wrong, I don't want to go to court. Yeah. Either way, I'm good. Yeah.
Would you buy a property with a stigma again?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would. Would I want like an investment portfolio for full of them? Probably not.
So you're not looking for them, but if the opportunity is right, you think you would do it.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, I mean, for anybody that's watching that maybe is buying their first home, you do need to consider what you're getting into, because as of right now, they're a little more difficult to not only attain but also to sell, right? So you'd have to think of your plan. But the way I look at it is like, if you're going to be there for 10, 15 years and it's a great fit for your family, as an example, it's got space in the neighborhood you need and all that sort of stuff, there's no problem with it as long as it's a safe home for your family to enjoy.
Awesome. How much money did you make off that house?
A lot. Yeah.
You can't tell me. Come on, it's all tax exempt.
Oh, geez, what did I?
I don't want to pressure you if you don't feel comfortable.
No, I'm fine. I mean, no, it's no secret the market's gone up. So I bought it in 2010, I think, for about just over 400,000. And
That's crazy to think about that.
oh, it's
That's
nuts,
crazy to think about
Yeah.
that. But okay, 400 grand.
Yes, and sold it for just under $1 million.
Wow.
So roughly about $600,000 over the course of 10 years.
Crazy.
So it wasn't a good investment at all. We're still living in a car.
The beauty is we're still tax free on principal residence, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a basement suite as an example, which is a great way to supplement the mortgage and stuff like that. And being a newer realtor at the time, it helped.
Yeah.
So
no, it's the way to go, right? Basement suite first, then the next investment property. So you've sold that house, you took that money, you went to a new property. And from what I understand, you prefer the method of rather investing in real estate, you're more interested in paying off your principal residence. Why is that?
yeah, so well,
Is it just because you're cheap? I mean,
Part-
you like a deal? Is that what it is?
Black Friday every day. There's a couple reasons. I've got this new philosophy where like when you're paying your mortgage, as an example, you're using after-tax money, right? And if you have the ability to I'm incorporated, my business is incorporated, as is yours, and so we've just set up a way to pay off that home, and then if we want to borrow that money back and start investing it, there's more tax efficient ways of doing everything, right? Yeah. So that's kind of what I focus on.
So do you think that's it? Is it the tax efficiency, or is it the fact that you're probably a little bit like me and absolutely terrified of debt?
I don't love debt. I don't think anybody wants to be in there. I do see a different side of that though. Like, whatever your property's worth, or the person watching whatever their property's worth. Let's say, they had a home that's worth $1 million and they owned it completely outright. If you had $1 million sitting in your bank account, you wouldn't just let it sit there. Right, you wouldn't just let it sit there and get 1% per year on the the interest rate that the bank offers in a checkings account. So you'd probably invest a portion of it in whatever you're comfortable with, right? So that's kind of the philosophy that I'm taking, is I want to pay down that mortgage first, and then I'm going to take that money back out and then use it for investments in a different way, and then hopefully write off the tax expense or the interest expenses.
Cool.
So, but I'm not a financial planner, so don't take your advice.
I'm not a financial planner. I'm good at making money.
Yeah.
All right, you want to look right there and tell everybody to like and subscribe?
Yeah. So here's the deal. If you like this video, and it was very good, because not only was the guest very entertaining, but your host is incredible. So what I'm going to suggest is, wherever the little subscribe button ends up here, Steve is very good at editing, that you subscribe, you like the video, leave a comment, let us know what you think, because we're trying to give you value. Steve works very, very hard to get these videos out to you guys. So like, subscribe, and you'll see the next one.
Thanks, man. Thanks for doing this.
Cheers.